Welcome, friends and fiends of the pod. I'm your host, film critic and comedian Nate Wyckoff, reminding you to like, subscribe, and go to cultandclassicfilms.com, where you can purchase exclusive cult ultra low budget films from us. And you can also subscribe and have them delivered monthly at a big discount to your door every month. So don't miss out on that. And unlike Rowdy Piper here and They Live, you don't need special glasses to see these deals. All right. So please, thank you and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Cult and Classic.
Hello, friends and fiends of the pod. This is a brand new mini episode of Cult and Classic. As always, I'm your host, Nate Wyckoff, comedian and film critic. You can check out my reviews at horrornews.net and right here at cultandclassicpodcast.com. As always, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and you can follow me on Twitter at Nate Wyckoff. And this week, we've got an awesome movie triple feature recommendation of forgotten films based on video games. Video game films have a very, very muddy history. As we know, there's been the often maligned Mario Brothers film for good reason. There's been the recent-ish flops of Assassin's Creed and several Doom films. There's a reason. A lot of video games don't have great stories behind them, and trying to prod and tweak that into some sort of narrative that you can cram into a film can be difficult work. And before you start with all the commenting, there are some video games with fantastic writing as well. We of course just had The Last of Us Part 2 launch last week, so there's good stuff, but these are of a different breed. First up, we've got a film based on the granddaddy of all side-scrolling beat-em-up games. And yes, I'm saying over River City Ransom. We're talking about Double Dragon. Double Dragon, the video game, was created by Technos, Japan. It was released in arcades in 1987. It became real popular in the 90s. It's always been fairly popular. They did an animated series in 1983, and in 94, they did this film adaptation. Now, the director of this film, he actually didn't direct a huge amount of films per se, but he directed a gajillion, and I mean gajillion, music videos, including some really fantastic ones like David Bowie's Modern Love in 1983, lots of Iron Maiden, Genesis, Phil Collins, Pat Benatar, Mike and the Mechanics, lots and lots and lots of stuff. So a very talented and skilled director, but not a huge amount of films under his belt. One interesting thing, if you do find music directors turned film directors interesting, check out The Return of Bruno with Bruce Willis. It is a strange comedy thing. I don't even know how to describe it. You're just gonna have to check it out for yourself. But anyway, that director is James Yukich, and it could be Yukik. I do not know how to pronounce it. I've never met Mr. Yukik. But this film, those of you who've watched over and over again the Super Mario Brothers film will sort of be familiar with this weird tendency for video game adaptations in the 90s to go sort of post-apocalyptic, mutant-y, dingy streets. It's a really weird thing for kids' movies. I'm not sure I get it, but I do enjoy it. The story for this is written by Neil Shusterman and Paul Dini. Paul Dini, fantastic comic book writer and TV writer, probably best known for being the writer who created Harley Quinn with artist Bruce Timm for the Batman the Animated Series, and he's currently writing some of the Harley television show and lots of other things. So a very good writer. The story, I'm not sure that particularly impresses anyone when you see the film. The screenplay is by Michael Davis and Peter Gould. Michael Davis is actually did a lot of art directing and production. He also wrote Shoot 'Em Up in 2007, some other films that 100 Girls directed, things like that. Most interesting to me, I think, is that he was in the art department for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. The art direction in that film was probably the strongest part of that movie. I mean, we're talking about the subway sewer set, of course, the costuming and makeup and design for the Shredder's baby mutants, stuff like that is really fascinating. So I mean, not bad writing talent here. Neil Schusterman he did a lot of kids television in the 90s. He was a writer for Animorphs, for Goosebumps, things of that nature. And R.L. Stein's Haunting Hour was probably he wrote a couple of episodes. But anyway, so there's some talent. If you just looked on paper, there's some interesting talent in this film. The two brothers, which make up Double Dragon for the video games, Jimmy Lee and Billy Lee, both martial artists in the game's lore, are played by Mark Dacascos, who well known for playing Liu Kang in Mortal Kombat Legacy, and what else are we looking at? Lots of stuff. I mean, you'll definitely recognize Mark if you're not familiar. Of course, the chairman for Iron Chef America is probably where most of America will recognize it, but those of us who listen to this podcast are not most America. I would say you might recognize it most recently from John Wick Chapter 3, where he plays Zero. Great actor, great martial artist, fun stuff. The other brother is, of course, played by Scott Wolf. He's the not smart one, the impetuous one, the Michelangelo of the group, one might say, most well known for Party of Five. But he's also done a lot of martial arts stuff as well, if you look through his repertoire of film histories. He was also, I thought it was fascinating, recognizing him as a waitstaff at the Max restaurant in Saved by the Bell back in the 90s as well. He's also, if you look real close, you can spot him as one of the gang thugs in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So everything cycles back to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So this film, how do I describe this film other than a post-apocalyptic future romp made for kids that is an absolute mess and kind of a joy to behold. It actually feels exactly like what you'd imagine Tank Girl, minus the weird sexuality, animatronic marsupials, and any adult content. That's pretty much exactly what this movie feels like. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I don't understand how that even would be a movie, but it is. And if you watch it, I guarantee you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. There's big monsters. There's some references to the game that are built up around completely not game canon things. Force feeding of a giant fat mutant is one of the best scenes in this film. And Robert Patrick, of course, most famous for being T-1000 in Terminator 2, and also being in those middle-end lost seasons of X-Files, replacing our wonderful David Duchovny. He plays the villain with this crazy Guy Fieri bleached hair. It's a sight to behold. And even those scenes with him, I mean, they're straight out of Tank Girl. And that's very fascinating to me. But this movie is a lot of fun. It's not written well. It's not interesting to anyone except for those of us who like weird, sort of borderline inappropriate children's movies with lots of practical effects. There's also some bad 3D thrown in there. I mean, this is 1994, and we're not talking Terminator 2. This is the beginning of the film. Let's listen to this clip where the brothers are in a car, and they're blazing through the streets running from a gang. Here we go.
Yeah, well, we needed to practice.
Yeah, well, you might be getting a whole lot more.
Hey, clowns. Those guys are gnarly. Hey. Picklet at 2 o'clock and she is my type. Pull over. Pull over.
I really don't think it's a good idea.
And that is the kind of dialogue you're going to be getting in this film. And that is to say, not very exciting. But the visuals really sell this one. The costumes are doofy. The practical effects and the monsters are pretty great. The costuming and hair and makeup is questionable. That other voice you heard in there, the female voice, I believe is Julia Nixon. And she's probably the best acting talent in that scene. But again, you heard what was there, and it wasn't much. We also have some attempts at jokes in this film, as every 90s kids movie should have. I will say that this one, between those that were successful in the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and those that were unsuccessful in all of Roller Gator, I'm going to put this somewhere dead in the middle here. Let's take a listen.
This must be the place Abobo was talking about.
Are they dead?
No. They're in some kind of suspended animation.
Shh. You wake the dead. Wake the dead. Get it? It's slick joke.
Slick joke. Yeah, that's the tagline that they chose for highlighting the jokes in this movie. Slick joke. I don't know what a slick joke is, but it sounds not family friendly. We've also got, like I said before, some appearances from characters in the game, like Bo, and some other characters, Whip Lady, things like that. It's fascinating. If you've played the games, then it's definitely worth a watch. If you like 90s nostalgia films, it's worth a watch. And if you like things like Three Ninjas and Surf Ninjas with Ernie Reyes Jr., then give this one a watch. It's worth it. I will give you that. Next up on our tour of forgotten video game films is 2005's DOA Dead or Alive. Now, it's 2005 or 2006, depending on whether you look at the production or the release date. But this was a kind of a high-profile flub at the time. Dead or Alive is a series of games that's still going on, like Double Dragon. It's produced by Tecmo. That's not Technos, but Tecmo and Team Ninja. They do a lot of great games, and they have for a long time. Dead or Alive is a fighting game, sort of 3D iterations, post Street Fighter, Tekken, that sort of thing. Mostly famous for a combo system where you can feign and counter attacks, and let's be honest, jiggle physics on women's breasts and bums. And that is pretty much what all the people waiting for this movie expected. And it's a weird beast. For a film that you think would be heavy on TNA, it does have a lot of bikinis and a lot of women fighting each other. What it doesn't have is sex appeal, any sort of adult situations, anything like that. It's a very child-oriented TNA flick with no nudity. There is a scene with nudity that was cut out of the film so it could get a PG-13 rating. I honestly don't understand how it has a PG-13 rating. I mean, being in a bathing suit does not PG-13 make. The director is Corey Yun, who is a phenomenal action director and martial arts choreographer. He's worked on pretty much the biggest martial arts films in US release, as well as the biggest martial arts films in the Chinese and Hong Kong market. So very, very, very prolific and successful director and fight choreographer. This is actually the last film in 2006 that he directed. It's a weird film to end on. There are stories that on set, because they tried to get a ton of different martial artists from different countries and styles, that there was anywhere from 12 to 30 something different languages on set at any given time, and it made directing and wrangling of cast and crew an impossible task. I'm not sure we see that impact in the film itself, because the script is not great, which is very strange, because there's actually some writing talent behind this one, kind of like Double Dragon. We've got the script writer for Pretty Woman, as well as Under Siege and Chain Reaction, J.F. Lawton. He can write. This movie does not have good writing. I'm going to say that right off the bat. No good. No bueno. There are three writers. Adam Gross and Seth Gross make up the other two, the writing team. They've worked on a little bit. They've worked on Devour, the 2005 film, Bill Nye the Science Guy, they were writers for. So, I mean, they worked, but I would not say that they were by any stretch as prolific as J.F. Lawton, who also is credited with creating the story for this film. The story is also not a good not a good one. We've got the typical some guy, in this case Eric Roberts, doing his best Eric Roberts impersonation, getting a bunch of fighters together to download, by watching their fights, their skill sets onto a mini disc, which I guess in 2006 was still a thing, and downloading it into his own brain so he can become a master fighter. I don't really understand the idea of putting Eric Roberts into a martial arts flick, but here we go. Let's listen to him introducing all of the fighters who were dropped via airplane to this island battleground.
Welcome to you all. Dead or Alive was created by the late, great Fame Douglas, Helena's father and my very good friend. Fame's will decreed this tournament, and as of this year, marking her 21st birthday, Helena's participation. My assistants will escort you to the lab, where you will now undergo a complete physical. Once you pass your physicals, DOA begins.
Now you can kind of get a vibe for the sort of spring break meets Sugar Ray era, you know, late 2000 or late 1990s, early 2000s appeal they were going for with that music. And at the end there, you hear that little computer sound. That's because all of the competitors are stepping into basically a 360 rotating computer generated machine. I mean, it's kind of like a body scan machine that we have now at the airports, but of course it's flashier looking. And I guess it's supposed to be video game like. It's not necessary. It's just telling the audience that it does not take itself seriously, and that's probably a good thing because, like I said, the script is not good, the humor is not good, but the action choreography is pretty good. The one thing I'll say against it, which maybe isn't against it for some of you, is it's kind of practiced on a 2D plane. I wonder if it was intentional to make it feel like a traditional fighting game, but it's a little limited, and we end up getting just over-the-shoulder shots or 180 shots of both fighters at all times, and it just gets a little tiresome. But there's an incredible amount of talent in the martial arts world on here. We have Song Ling, Hun Lin, Anna Bolt, Li Shi, Ying Wang, Silvio Samak, Derek Boyer, Colin Chow, Kevin Nash is in this, Brian White, of course, Kane Kosugi plays Ryo Hiyabashi. That was a nice touch from Ninja Gaiden there that also works into the storyline. Holly Vance, Devin Aoki, I hate mispronouncing her name, from Sin City and Too Fast, Too Furious and Mutant Chronicles, which is a fun film with Ron Perlman and Thomas Jane and John Malkovich. They're all here, and they do a great job doing what they need to do, which is either throwing punches or showing skin while throwing punches, and they do a fine job. My favorite is the lead is Jamie Presley. She is fantastic in this, adding a little bit of humor to her role, does not take it too seriously, which really helps compared to some other people that are over the top mugging to the camera. I think that she takes a little bit more subtle position. And of course, if you recognize her name, if you see her, you'll recognize her from My Name is Earl, Torque, and Not Another Teen Movie. And my personal favorite, next to Mortal Kombat Conquest series, where she played Mika, would be the Journey Absolution, with Mario Lopez. Riff Tracks did a great coverage of that a few years back, so take a watch of that if you like. But again, the cast is impressive. I can see why they were brought together and why there was buzz about this film at the time, with a director like Corey Yuen and this crazy cast of martial artists and TNA. But it's entertaining, but highly disappointing. If you expect anything particularly sexy or anything particularly tense, you will not get it. But if you just like watching a myriad of fight scenes strung together by sometimes cringeworthy plot, then it's worth it. And to production's credit, they actually make Eric Roberts' fight scenes pretty believable, if that can be believed at all. So that brings us to our third film here, Sonic the Hedgehog. No, not the Sonic the Hedgehog with Jim Carrey that has recently graced television screens and streaming platforms. We are talking about the Sonic the Hedgehog anime, OVA, which stands for original video series, something like that. You can Google that on your own. I don't have to do everything for you. The Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie, is from 1996. Like I said, it is animated. It is an anime film. It is actually two roughly half-hour episodes that were just sort of sold together as one continuous hour-long feature in the US. That is not to say that it's choppy. It is one story that just happened to be made in two episodes, as is often the case with OVAs in Japan as they're shown on television. The plot, I feel, and I think at the time, especially if this is released, a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog fanboys agreed with me, was a nice interpretation of the games. We have all of the characters here for the most part, especially from the core early games, which the series started in 1991. Sonic the Hedgehog was sort of made by Sega to compete with Mario, and this is a good interpretation. The areas look like areas from the game imagined as actual places. Eggman, or Dr. Robotnik here in the US, is the villain. He looks like him. He acts like him. He's rotund and uses lots of gadgets like him. Sonic runs real fast. He spins into a ball. His buddy Tails has two tails that spin and make him fly. And Knuckles, the Echidna, are there, sort of the bare knuckle brawler kind of vibe. It all fits. And the plot is sort of centers around Robotnik's plan to take over these two areas of the world that these characters inhabit by creating Metal Sonic. And Metal Sonic has found his way into the games as well. And it's great. The animation is nice. It's not Studio Ghibli by any stretch, but it's also above par for most series animated shows. Perhaps in recent years that's changed, but this is worth it. Let's take a listen here. I will say these are the American voices that were chosen, and well, I'm just going to say that they take some getting used to, but I did get used to them, and actually now I think about them in these terms. So this is Sonic and Tails.
Sonic! I finally finished it! See, isn't it great? It's a jet-propelled bodyboard. Come on, you want to try it out?
Not right now, thanks.
All right, I'll go use it myself.
Tails is just like a little kid with his new toy.
Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Those voices are so nasal, they are terrible. Tails is played by Lainey Frazier, who, if for lovers of anime, have probably heard her. She was the English voice for the Chocobaba in Final Fantasy Unlimited. Devil Lady, she's been a couple of voices in, I believe, at least one. There's Legends of Crystania. There's a lot in here. New Fist of the North Star, she was Yura. It's what I recognized her from. I understand what you're saying. It's very nasally, but let me tell you something. If we can get used to Mario's catchphrase being, "It's me, Mario," then we can get used to Tails sounding like he has a chronic sinus infection. So it's clear also that for the American version, the voice of Sonic is not Steve Urkel, but it's close, which of course is Jamil White, who played the voice of Sonic in the American initial cartoon series, which is just super goofy and not based off the games almost at all, and some other iterations. So it's made to be close to that, and I think that that's a good job. Martin Burke is that voice, and again, lots of anime series. Ninja Resurrection, the series has him as well as Tokisada Shiro. So you may recognize this if you're an anime fan, and if not, you're just a Sonic fan, then really give these a listen. The script is pretty good. The story is pretty good. The story is penned, the Japanese version. I guess the story is the same for the American version as well, as Masashi Kubota, who did Orphan, or Sorceress Stabber Orphan, if you look at the Japanese translation of the name, and The Soul Taker, also both worth a watch. Directed by Kazunori Ikigama, And really, it's strange. Not a lot of, at least over here in the States, not a lot of production or direction after this film. I did an episode of Initial D in 1998, 2 years after the Sonic film. But other than that, not much. Worked in the art department in Ask Dr. Rin as a storyboard artist. Did actually a fair amount of storyboard material. So I wonder if that's where Ikigami is now. But I think it's sad because the directing on this film is pretty good. So I hope that there's more on the Japanese side of things than we get here in the States. There's some weird things in this film. It's a little bit, I guess I would say, more adult than the other Sonic iterations we get here in the States, in that there's tension. There's Sarah, who is the sort of bride-to-be character, ditzy character of Dr. Robotnik or Eggman. And there's weird scenes, like Metal Sonic comes up to the floor and she calls him a pervert and covers her skirt, things like that are very anime tropes. It's fine for kids. I would say it's not over the top at any stretch, but it's just, I think in the US don't expect to see that in Sonic. It's because there's very few humanoid characters we ever see in Sonic. So stuff like that's a little odd. However, there's some other stuff that's pretty great. Some of the side characters you get to see, Old Man Owl, is just, these are great. It felt like a combination of the fantastic, and I believe still, even though they're ended, they were the longest running video game comics series, was Archie's Sonic the Hedgehog, which if you're interested at all in Sonic the Hedgehog, those are the holy grail of Sonic fiction. I absolutely love them. Everyone loves them. It's a real shame that they're gone now because Sega needed the rights back, I guess, for something else. But it's a sad day when that ended. But this is a good fix if that's your thing and you haven't seen it or you want to watch it again. Definitely check out Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie from 1996, or Sonic the Hedgehog, original title. Yeah, I don't know if you can understand that, but that is Sonic the Hedgehog translated into Japanese. So give these films a watch. I absolutely think they are worth it. There's also some honorable mentions. Maybe we'll get to another day. There's the Turok Dinosaur Hunter animated film from the 2000s. I did not include that because technically that's more based on the comic books, which the games are also based off of. So don't DM me saying that is something that should have been on my list, because it's not appropriate for this section. All right. I'm going to play some outro music from our friends, The Chud. And as always, any clips in this podcast are for humans only. If you'd like to learn more about Cult and Classic Podcast, visit us at cultandclassicpodcast.com. Feel free to donate. We would love you for it. Watch for the soon-coming Patreon. Follow us on Instagram at Cult and Classic Podcast and Facebook at facebook.com/cultandclassicpodcast. My name is Nate Wyckoff. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and donate.